From League Safe World Headquarters, it's Fantasy Football Almost Daily. With Paul Charch, Matt Harrison, Christian Peterson, and Brian Johnson.
Welcome to a Free Agent Tuesday here at Fantasy Football Almost Daily. I am Paul Charch, and my co-hosts today, Christian Peterson and Matt Harrison.
Charch.
Hey!
Hey, you.
Hey, good looking. No, that was Mr. Microphone, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Hey, good looking. I'll be back to pick you up later.
What the hell is going on right now?
I know.
I don't know. Charch pointed at me, so I pointed back at him.
Yeah, how about that?
Not mad at him.
That's
You're
the
just
cheesiest
pointing
move
at
of
him.
all time, is the point like
The
that.
double point.
The double point is
Hey,
worse. That is worse.
And
You're
with
right.
the click.
Yeah, with the guns. Yeah, that's the double
Yeah.
point is worse.
Mm-hmm.
Now-
Hey, Chief.
Yeah, thanks.
Little of that.
Thanks, champ.
Champ. Yeah.
Because we're on video, people can see this now, but if you're just listening to
Yeah,
the audio, you might
you're
want to
stuck.
check
You
out
don't-
the YouTube
yeah.
channel.
Yeah.
For a lot of
Missing
pointing.
out-
Because
missing
that's
out on a lot of
Because
fun.
you just want to see what we're doing.
Absolutely. We're here on Tuesdays to talk free agency. Let's begin at the quarterback position. Carson Wentz with another fantastic game. He and Sam Bradford are my top free agent additions for this week, and I think those are the guys that are largely available and people that are getting targeted.
Those touched by Doug Peterson, huh?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
I feel like your praise of Wentz is a little overly effusive. From
I'm
a
so
from a
impressed.
real life standpoint, I agree.
Yeah.
A rookie in his first two NFL starts, he's looked very good. But from a fantasy perspective, the first game was fine, 280 yards and 2 touchdowns
Right.
against the Browns. The second, he had 190 yards and 1 touchdown on Monday night.
Well,
And
but it
he's
was also
also-
a game where they were ahead throughout, and the Bears had no will to win. They
Yeah,
were never
but the
close.
Bears secondary is brutally bad too. I don't know
But
if they're
for-
any better than Cleveland.
I was
So
going to say that he's played 2 bottom 5 teams in the NFL to start his career.
And
Let's see what happens when he plays the Steelers this week.
So I just think from a fantasy perspective, I don't want to get too excited about it because I don't know if he's going to be capable of putting up these big, 270,
Explosive numbers.
275 to 300
Is Sam
yards
Bradford
and a couple touchdowns.
more capable of the explosive game? I think he is.
I think he is.
Yeah.
And we saw that on Sunday night. I mean,
Yeah.
he put up some big numbers and
Against a much better defense than what Wentz has
clearly.
played.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, the more you're making a compelling case. I've got the two ranked very similarly. They're within 5% of each other for my blind bidding recommendation, but I might flip-flop them.
you get a star for that, CP.
Here's the downside, though. Who's going to play 16 games? Well, okay, now 14 games.
Yeah, that's
That was why I knocked
riskier
Bradford
with
down.
Bradford.
Come to think of it, that was why is the offensive line brutal. At one point, Alex Boone, the starting left guard for the Vikings, turned in game after allowing one of the many sacks that Sam Bradford went through. Turned to him and said, "Please don't be dead."
That's bad.
That's
nice of
bad.
him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's my worry on
It is
Bradford.
worth noting that Lane Johnson of the Eagles, left tackle, has just been given a suspension too. So
Yeah.
10 games.
Yeah, that hurts.
he's appealing, but they'll knock it down to maybe 6 or 7. But he's going to be missing his tackle for Carson Wentz will be missing his tackle for quite a while.
Sam Bradford had a very good game against a very good defense, and it's the question now is one game with all the surprise. There wasn't much surprise that he was going to be the quarterback, but how he would look in this offense was a pretty big surprise, I think, and how he could perform mechanically. I couldn't have, if you didn't tell me he had been there 2 weeks, I never would have known.
No,
he looked like he had a full command of the offense, and they
Yeah.
obviously were very smart about how they worked with him and what they asked him to do because it all looked totally natural for Sam
Yeah,
Bradford.
he was incredible, and he was making throws that a player who was once picked number 1 overall in the NFL
should
draft makes. I
Yeah.
mean, you could argue that he was moving that Vikings offense in a way that Teddy Bridgewater just isn't capable of doing with some of those long passes that he was doing. So yeah, super impressive. And then I think again from a fantasy perspective, the Vikings are probably going to have to lean on him a little bit here with Adrian Peterson out for an undetermined amount of time. We think at least 4 weeks, maybe a couple.
We don't know. I mean, the Vikings are saying he could
nobody
play
knows.
this week, but I think there's some games.
I mean, the range, the
I've heard
scenarios
anywhere
here
from 2 weeks to the season.
to the season. Yeah. So if Peterson is out, this offense is suddenly going to have to flow a little bit more, maybe a lot more through the passing game than anybody thought.
All right, let's go to the running back position. There's a ton of running back injuries, and yet despite all of that, I don't think this is a break the bank week for anybody.
Not very compelling backups to pick up.
No, my top rated guy is Kenneth Dixon. who I feel is, with all the struggles that Justin Forsett is having and Terrence West, they're both averaging right around 3.5 yards per carry. This thing is set up for Kenneth Dixon when he comes back from the knee injury, which we're entering into the early part of that with the window of when he could come back.
Yep.
This feels like the time to go get him. He's available in roughly half of leagues, and Kenneth Dixon could easily walk into an opportunity to win that job, and he wouldn't have to look that good. Average 4 yards a carry, and you can go win the Baltimore job.
I think people are really overlooking Baltimore as a team that really struggled last year due to maybe the most injuries in the NFL.
Nope, they had the most.
And this year, that team's going to be solid. They set up Flacco with some really downfield threats with Wallace and Steve Smith and Perriman. That's going to feed into the running game too, and the running game will find success eventually, and it's going to be Dixon who's going to be the guy who finds that success when he comes back.
I think he's the best of the bunch. Let's talk about some of the guys that could perform better with the opportunity that injury allows. Cameron Artis-Payne is an inactive because he doesn't play special teams most weeks. But what we saw last year was in the 4 games when Stewart went down, weeks 15, 16, and 17, he was the lead back. And we got everybody's pushing on Fozzie Whitaker. They've got this thing wrong. When Stewart went down last year, Cameron Artis-Payne had 38 touches. Whitaker had 13. And that's the way this is going to go again, I believe.
Yeah, I do too. The problem is that Cameron Artis-Payne just isn't a very good player. So he didn't do much with the touches that he got last year.
No, he scored 1 touchdown and he ran for about 4 yards a carry.
Yeah, and so although he's likely to be the goal line back, the problem with Panthers backs has always been that Cam Newton is much better in that role than any of the running backs.
And they run Tolbert there every now and again.
Yeah.
And they could even run Fozzie Whitaker if they wanted to near the strike.
And he's not going to catch passes. They don't throw a lot to their running backs anyways, but that's going to be Whitaker's role. So, Cameron Artis-Payne.
But he does drop in and looks like those are all things that Jonathan Stewart deals with too. Every one of them, right? He drops in, he becomes Jonathan Stewart, just not quite as good.
Right.
He's 80% of Jonathan Stewart, Cameron Artis-Payne.
Yep.
And if we don't even know for sure how long this hamstring injury is going to shelf him. I mean, for all we know, he's going to play Sunday.
Yeah, right.
So, but if Cameron Artis-Payne is labeled as the starter this week, do you want to start him against the Vikings?
Maybe not. I mean, the Vikings' run defense has looked awesome. Awesome. So maybe not. But Cam Newton does have a tendency to open up things for a running game in ways that other quarterbacks can. So I'm in on Cameron Artis-Payne, but my blind bidding recommendation's in the single digits, 8%, and mostly if you're a Stewart owner, I think it particularly makes sense. I'm off Fozzie Whitaker altogether. You can pick him up if you want. I've got a 4% bid rate at him, but for the reasons we just described, I don't want him.
Yep.
Dwayne Washington is interesting to me. And he's somebody that I think has got more long-term value. He's the goal line back from the Lions, who is the presumptive starter if Amir Abdullah's foot doesn't heal. And
this is your Zach Zenner replacement.
This is my Zach Zenner replacement.
I think Riddick starts though.
Yes, Riddick will be the starter.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Riddick will be the starter. He'll take to some degree. He'll take the Abdullah role. But the beauty is, Riddick's not. They're not going to pound 40 runs through Theo Riddick.
Right.
No chance, right?
Correct.
Washington's going to get 15 touches and all the goal line work. So he's
Joik Bell, basically. From last year.
That's true.
And what I like about his situation, maybe certainly more than the Cameron Artis-Payne or the Carolina situation, is Abdullah's got this foot injury that again it's a little obscure and nobody quite knows how bad it is, but that's the kind of thing that can linger all season long.
A foot on a running back could be a bad injury.
So you're looking at Washington as potentially a guy who has value, all season long, unlike some of these other fill-ins that we've already talked about and that we're going to talk about. So he's one of the more intriguing guys, and you can probably get him for just more cheaply than Fozzie Whitaker probably Cameron Artis-Payne or Jerick McKinnon or Matt Asiata.
Right, we haven't even talked about them yet. Agreed. And the other thing about Washington is, in any given week, he might get a couple of goal line carries. And so even in, you could roster him just in the event that you have a Sunday disaster, you've got a guy you could fill in and you have a chance at a goal line touchdown.
How about this? In a PPR league, are you looking at replacement running backs? Say your running back tandem just blew up this last weekend. Are you looking more for guys who will get goal line carries, or are you looking for guys who will get receptions in a
It's
PPR
scoring
league.
system, right?
Yeah,
If
in
it's a
PPR, I'm
league,
looking
I'm
for the
looking mostly for the
receiving.
receptions,
Okay.
just so I can get my 4 receptions in. And that brings us to Shane Vereen.
Yeah.
Got a bunch of carries last week, but what people may not know is that Rashad Jennings went out with a hand injury, and that's when Vereen got most of those carries.
Yeah, got a
And-
couple of goal line carries late in that
Including goal
game
line.
that he didn't convert. But
No, because he's Shane Vereen. Your total mismatch. The beauty here, I think, is that we've solidified that he is the backup, and I feel a little bit better about knowing that they're not going to just throw Orleans Darkwa into the game. Although he got a couple of carries.
Yeah, not only that, but even in week 1 when Jennings was fully healthy, I believe Vereen had 8 carries, which is certainly more than he was ever involved last year. We
That's
know
right.
he's going to get the receptions. He's a good, he's capable of 6-7 receptions in any given game. But what we didn't know is that he's going to be involved apparently every week,
Right.
on handoffs as well, and that's very valuable.
Paul Perkins has not seen the field. DeAndre Washington's available in half of leagues, which surprised me a little bit. The Raiders change of pace back. The catch here is they're using 3 different guys to run the ball. But the good thing is, or bad thing, depending on if you're a Latavius Murray owner, Latavius Murray got 48% of the team snaps last week. That's it.
Yeah.
This
It's
thing,
concerning.
that tells me that, the coaching staff is not fully galvanized behind Murray and that there's opportunity.
Or
here.
does it tell you that the coaching staff is committed to keeping running backs fresh? Because we rewatched that game in the office the other day, and I thought Latavius Murray looked really good.
He did.
in that
He looked
game.
fine. Yeah.
So he had burst, he had speed. I think it might be a situation where they just want to keep everybody as fresh as possible and don't want to have one guy shoulder the load there, which might make all of them less valuable in the long run.
Yeah.
You've also got Latavius Murray with a history of injury. And, this whole putting out not your best running back sounds good until you need wins. And desperate teams, things could change. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
And, we've often seen what starts as a rotation ends up turning into one guy running the ball. All right, let's go to the Vikings situation. Adrian Peterson expected to miss, we think, at least a couple of games, although the Vikings are being cagey about it. Jerick McKinnon being reached for in a lot of leagues. I think there's several reasons not to blow a budget on Jerick McKinnon. First, Adrian could come back in 1 week and maybe play Sunday. Maybe it's the week after that. I don't want to blow my budget on a 1 or 2 week guy. Second, the offensive line is it couldn't be worse. It's the Seahawks and the Vikings are 1A and 1B with terrible offensive lines right now, unfortunately. And then there's Matt Asiata as the probable goal line back. So you put all that together, and
It could be Matt Asiata and McKinnon in like a 50-50 split.
right,
Well,
which is what it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, in 2014 when Peterson missed 15 games, Asiata was a top 15 back in PPR.
because
he
of
scored,
the
he scored
touchdowns.
10 touchdowns, and he had, I want to say, 40 receptions. They trust him as a pass blocker, so I think as often as not, he'll be the guy that's in there on third down, getting some of the receptions. So Jerick McKinnon is probably going to
He's the
get
sexier name,
He's going to
but-
get 2/3 of the
yeah.
playing time, but it might be just the handoffs and
You
all
know-
your scoring plays, your touchdowns and your receptions might go to Asiata.
I don't know
Correct.
if he'll get 2/3 of the snaps.
I'm not
I would
convinced
lean
either.
that
It could be more of a
Asiata would be the
50-50
guy
like you said.
who might get like a 60-40 split.
All right, let's move on. Jay Ajayi, terrible player, awful NFL player at every level. He's got
Well, he was good
Cleveland
in
this
college.
week.
So pick him up.
But Cleveland, it sounds like Cleveland is an easy matchup, but Cleveland's actually been good against the run this year. They're giving up 3.5 yards per carry. They're like top 6 or something against the run so far this year. I think he stinks, and he's mostly rostered already. And I think if he isn't rostered, you should not bother to go get him.
But you have him ahead in your article here. You have him ahead of Kenyon Drake. So you'd rather
do.
if
Well,
you
I
were
also don't
forced to
particularly
choose
love-
one, you would take Ajayi.
I'd still take it.
Okay.
Yes. There are a handful of others that you could throw a dart at, including Ray Rice, if you feel like Ray Rice is, if the media reports are true, the teams are speculating about bringing him back, you could throw a dart on Ray Rice, but I don't think I would.
There's some other semi-intriguing names out there. Ronnie Hillman is a guy who isn't on a team right now,
Correct.
and he could,
Carlos
San Diego might be a
Williams.
fit for him. Carlos Williams,
Yeah.
CJ Spiller is out there.
As the Danny Woodhead replacement, maybe
Yeah.
in San Diego.
Be a great fit there.
A fit.
Let's go to the wide receiver position. Mike Wallace is mostly rostered after his big week 1. Then he came back with an even bigger week 2. So, and obviously, if he's available, you're going to go pay for him and pay handsomely. You're probably going to have to bid in the 30-40% range to go get him.
I'm nervous because I believe he only has 7 receptions on the season.
Yeah,
and
this is
three
what
of
he's
them have
about.
gone for touchdowns.
Yeah, this is what he's about. I think the chance of this turning into a mirage is pretty high. It's just he's going to be an all or nothing guy. It's been all for 2 weeks, but when you don't catch enough passes, it's hard for that to be consistent.
And kudos to our weekly show for recommending Mike Wallace as a forte play over the weekend, saying, "Hey, you want a guy who could go boom or bust? Mike Wallace, throw him in."
Yeah. Tyrell Williams, as we discussed last week, available in over 50% of leagues, so a lot of people didn't react to the Keenan Allen injury. They left the best San Diego receiver, Tyrell Williams, available.
Well,
go get
second
him.
best, right? Behind Travis Benjamin.
Yeah, right. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Dontrell Inman getting picked up, almost as much, which is ridiculous.
Yeah,
so
he's a non-factor.
Williams is your slot guy, but he's a legitimate threat. And now with Danny Woodhead out, just that many more balls to go around to all the other guys who are healthy. So we like Tyrell Williams quite a bit.
His touchdown was really impressive.
It was a nice touchdown.
It was a great run.
Josh Doxson got targeted not once, not twice, 3 times in the end zone. I mean, they are all about throwing to him. Now, he converted none of them, and one for sure was on his fault. One for sure was on Cousins, but I like that they were doing that, and his role is just going to expand. Pierre Garçon's role is going to get smaller. Go get Josh Doxson while you can, available in almost half of leagues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jamison Crowder, I believe, had double-digit targets again this week, too. So he's available in a handful of leagues that I've seen as well.
Quincy Enunwa, 2 straight games where he has been a serious part of the Jets' passing offense. Brandon Marshall's still not 100%, so another one could be coming up. I'll note this, though. In those 2 big games, he was playing teams that had he's a slot guy, questionable slot corner situations, including the Bengals, who were without their starting slot corner. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be, I think that may have been a little more situational, but Enunwa is a really big-bodied slot guy. You rarely see slot guys built like he is. And his pass catching, which has always been bad throughout his career, has gotten better.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that Marshall is going to play this week. There was just some news this morning where he came out and was making sort of vague statements about how it's going to go right up to game time and he really wants to play. But he didn't sound overly confident that he's going to play after that knee injury. So if that happens, then I think at least for 1 week, Enunwa is a great pickup.
You mentioned Jamison Crowder, Matt. 18 targets so far in 2 games.
Yeah.
So, highly active in that game plan. I do think that's going to come down a fair amount over the next few weeks, and especially as Doxson gets up to speed on his Achilles injury. Nelson Aguilar has shown actual fantasy value and hit my radar as well. Back from
had
the
a couple of bad drops.
Yeah, that's always
night,
been his.
The game flow in that Philly game last night was really, and the announcers were talking about it. They're getting everybody involved. I don't feel really good about anybody on the Philly side besides the 2 Matthews, Ryan and Jordan.
Sounds right.
Yeah, I agree.
Jesse James, moving to tight end, has been super active. He's 6'7". Dude's just a freaking beast. I mean, when we love the big-bodied guys for goal line work, and looks like that's going to hold up. He's a second-year pro. He's been targeted 12 times in the 2 weeks.
By the way, the touchdown he scored this weekend, he stole from Antonio Brown. It was targeted toward
I was wondering
Brown,
that, yeah.
And he's so damn tall
so big
that he jumped up and went and got it at the high point and brought it down. So he's stealing touchdowns from Antonio Brown.
How dare he?
Trey Burton is your Eagles tight end to own, not Brent Selleck. I was wrong. It happens. He was targeted a bunch of times last Monday night, and so
he's an athletic guy, a college quarterback.
How about that?
Yeah, so
turned tight end. I mean, you see college quarterback turned other things, but not often tight end.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, Matt, you touched on this already. It feels like Carson Wentz his bread and butter is going to be these shorter passes to guys like Jordan Matthews or running backs or tight ends.
Dennis Pitta, back from the dead, at least until he shatters his femur or something like that.
He's always been a hip guy.
He's a big hip guy.
Yeah.
Very big on
the
hip
injury. He has bionic
injury.
hips at this point.
Top 10 fantasy tight end in 2012, if you want to go back that far. Finally healthy and getting a ton of use, 16 targets so far in 2 weeks from Joe Flacco. Vance McDonald is scored touchdowns in both of the first 2 weeks.
Yeah, 75-yard touchdown.
Done it on 3 receptions.
It's pretty impressive.
So, again, I don't trust those guys. The rare kicker recommendation.
What?
Nick Novak, available in virtually all leagues. He's Houston's kicker, and he actually has the most field goal attempts and most field goal makes through 2 weeks. And he's available in a lot of leagues.
Pick him up.
There you go. All right, there you go. The Fantasy Football Weekly Almost Daily Podcast. Anything else that we should mention? Tomorrow we're back with Panic Room. The Panic Room
yeah.
game.
Oh my gosh.
Critically acclaimed.
Critically, after 1 week, it's already award-winning.
Do I have, since you were the winner last week, do I have to let Brian sit in for me as an
The
You've been
challenge-
relegated.
challenger? That's not a
You've
bad
been
idea.
relegated. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we might have to do it that way. All right,
Bummer.
we'll talk to you tomorrow for the Panic Room.